Welcome to Inside Music Curation. Thanks so much for joining us. We are the team from Feed Media Group. We're a B2B music solutions company, and I'm joined today with four of our amazing curatorial staff. These guys are working hard to bring the right music to the right people at the right time through our partner apps, such as fitness brands, retail brands. We kind of run the gamut there. And today we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And so it's a great topic. We've had a blog post go up by Claire this week, a lot of conversations happening in the office. Arturo, tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to talk about on the call today.
Well, I'm excited about the time that we're living now. Being from Latin America, I'm originally from Chile. It was always interesting to see how Latin American countries, like consume so much, American or European music. And I have a feeling, not a feeling, but I know for sure, like even working in the industry, in my home country of Chile, the desire of artists, to try to break it in bigger markets. Mexico is a huge market for Latin artists, but in the last, I'll say, 5 years, from a curatorial standpoint, we've seen tons of music climbing the charts, right? The genre of like trap and reggaeton, those are like the most popular genres. I mean, we also have some popular artists, but right now, I mean, and specifically today, reggaeton is dominating the charts, right? And for us as curators, I mean, it's music that we use a lot. I mean, it's super it's friendly music to work out to. It sounds positive. I mean, it's and I think it's a genre is still in their. I mean, it's been around underground since the late '90s, but I think we're now seeing like how this genre is starting to like become something unique and very special. I think a lot of transformations have happened throughout the years. We could talk more about that, but I'm excited about the fact that Latin music in the U.S. and in general in the world, just like a gimmick, like La Macarena or songs that they were kind of funny. I think in this case, it's this music it's becoming relevant and will be influential, hopefully for like other pop music styles in the world.
Yeah, Juan, do you want to take us on a deeper dive?
Oh yeah, I mean, a part of my experience with reggaeton is lived experience.
Yeah.
But around 93, 94, my parents and I, we went down to visit family. We do that every summer. And they have like a local MTV. And on this local MTV, they had this new style of music that was reggaeton. And at that time, it was like these artists that performed on this mixtape called The Noise, which had like a starter jacket like logo on it, which is funny. Anyways, so what's interesting about reggaeton, right, is that it started as an underground like art form, and then it continued on to basically incorporate more of not only US culture, but also world culture, which is kind of like where we are at today, where like reggaeton is one of the biggest genres of music popular wise throughout the entire world. So I normally like my taste is mostly for a lot of that older stuff, but there's so like in the last 3-4 years with the addition of Bad Bunny and all of these new artists, there's been an exceptional amount of new artists that are giving us like better reggaeton almost, right? I think Arturo was mentioning or not Arturo, I'm sorry, Melissa, you were mentioning how you liked some of that new Bad Bunny, and it's just like that transformation. But as well, Claire actually wrote an amazing article for the Feed blog on a lot of these newer artists. Claire, would you like to speak to any of that?
Sure. Yeah, it was a really fun post to sort of dive into. I mean, my sort of background and relationship with Latin music is kind of an interesting one in that, yeah, I'm not a native Spanish speaker, didn't even take it in high school, and so it is very much where I've picked up a few Spanish phrases here and there. But I had a lot of friends in high school who were listening to a lot of the like early 2000s wave of reggaeton. And I sort of fell into it that way and always really loved the beats and just sort of the percussiveness of it as well. And I think, there's so many different Latin genres, and this one has obviously risen to the top, and you're getting not just a like pop remix done in Spanish, or artists who do speak Spanish, like a Christina Aguilera or a Selena Gomez or Jennifer Lopez doing, a Spanish version of a song. It's outright hits from these Spanish artists, and I think the nature of the internet and being able to sort of like break down those international boundaries has led to this sort of like opening of people being, not turned off to any sort of content based on the language. And I think, music, and especially, Latin music especially has really come to the forefront because of that.
Yeah, there was that interesting article that came out in Rolling Stone, and the internet played a big role in this, right? They were talking about, Spotify has a couple of playlists, a reggaeton playlist and Viva Latino, and, they credited to saying, they almost single-handedly created hits, in the US and around the world from these genres. And I think that's really interesting. I mean, again, as we see, the places where people are discovering music changing, we're seeing the music that's rising to the top changing as well.
One of the things that I wanted to mention about that is the fact that, and to touch on Claire's point, is before, or I'm assuming still is, but Bad Bunny, one of the things that he's very proud about is the fact that he has never had to go into and sing in English. He's done it in Spanish, and he's been very very adamant about that. That like he was able to get to this level without doing any effort. Maybe obviously he participated in some collaborations. You can see him everywhere now. I see him like collaborating with Gorillaz, with Damon Albarn from Blur as well. Like Coldplay was doing a song at a live show recently, and they were doing it somewhere in Latin America, and everybody's singing the song, and it's Coldplay covering Bad Bunny. So there is a real phenomenon here happening, and I think it's interesting to that point, because the highest entry barrier that I remember was the language to enter the US. Now it seems like that's not an issue anymore when you look at Billboard and look at the charts.
Yeah, there's been an interesting sort of wave of it being, like I mentioned, the like remix thing before, then it became to like collaborations, and you had Despacito just sort of open the floodgates of what is possible as a pop Latin crossover with Bieber singing in Spanish to various degrees of accuracy, apparently. But to have that really be the like testing ground for then some other hits that were sort of maybe more bilingual. Thinking like Beyonce on Mi Gente with J Balvin and Willie William, and then from there, like it's really just been growing and growing.
And Claire, during that time period, there was an emergence there, with the collaborations. We also had Ozuna Taki Taki with Cardi B, Selena Gomez featuring in those tracks. So and I want to make a point that this year, Hispanic Heritage Month, the theme is Unidos, which is united. It's inclusivity for a stronger nation. So this is celebrating the diversity, strength and contributions of Latin America, and I think we can see this in music. We see it with U.S. pop. We're seeing it globally now, also. So this is great to see, and I'm excited to see more. When it comes to Latin artists, in the near future.
To build off that, before in the 90s, a lot of times reggaeton was only really done culturally within like the confines, right? Like Puerto Ricans, Colombians. What is amazing now is you're seeing all of the nations get together and create music. And I think that that's reflecting great on like, you know, the charting, right? Because the more the merrier. But also I think that's another reason why this music is just expanding even further than we ever thought.
Yeah, and the theme really strikes with me as well in terms of like some artists who have Hispanic Latin roots, maybe, you know, quote unquote, making it as an English artist first, but are then able to go back and connect with their culture in that way as well. I think that's, a really important part of the journey as well.
Well, as a matter of fact, Melissa and I were talking about Jose Gonzalez, who's Swedish. He's always sung in English. He did, you know, his first record in Spanish, honoring, I guess, you know, his background. Yeah. So a lot of people, I guess, you know, they're gonna, as you were saying, you know, like gonna be more comfortable, I guess, you know, singing and doing art in their. I'm not sure if Jose Gonzalez Spanish, you know, is his first language, but a lot of people, you know, they the ones that grew up here, they grew up with both languages, so it might be an opportunity to be more inclusive. So yeah, I look forward to that.
I think there's an artist named Bia who's more of a rapper than a reggaetona, but she utilizes both, which is super dope. And like Karol G, Becky G, all the G's, but they are able to really mix and match. And what I find really interesting, right, is that they're not only able to just rap, you know, they sing. And I think that very much how you see like how Drake became the big phenomenon was that he was able to pair the sensual nature of R&B and kind of like the roughness of hip hop, right? You're seeing this not only in men but in women, and it's honestly bringing the genre more attention and more joy.
I was going to ask you, Juan, I mean, how would you like explain to someone from a music standpoint, because you're a musician, you know, what reggaeton is made of? Like, because we think, you know, it's reggae and something else, but
yeah,
you having that knowledge,
it's convoluted, right? Because it is based in reggae, more like the dembao, the beat, right? But then it's kind of like hip hop,
right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like hip hop in the sense that you could sprinkle whatever you want on top of that beat, and you can create an amazing amount of stuff, you know, whether it be like cultural style, like merengue, salsa with reggaeton, or like Alejandro, yes, where dude, that guy sounds like Justin Bieber. You know, like it's so cool to hear that. And you know, I know me and Armando very much like Raul, so I'll let you speak on some of that.
A while for, you know, about him, and you know, a few months ago we said, hey, this guy's gonna blow up, and sure enough, he's nominated for, I think,
8 Latin Grammys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no denying the sort of like crowd pleasing nature of it. And I think that's what has been hard for the industry to keep ignoring. And that it's really breaking through now is that, that there's an inherent energy and positivity and just suitable for, you know, so many different situations. So, I think it's really exciting to see more, that it's not just, you know, this echelon of like just top artists that you can find within Latin music, all sorts of like, if you want like a country style equivalent, if you want a boy band equivalent, you've got CNCO. So there's really, you know, something for everyone within that sphere.
And, you know, speaking to what you're talking about, the music and the rhythm, you know, a while back I was programming music for studio clubs. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to the actual, you know, club and getting myself in the club and experience that class. You know, so we saw this emergence with, you know, Latin dancing and Zumba. So I decided to go, you know, my intention was go, you know, hide there in the back and take the class. You know, I was a little intimidated by the class. But when I got there, it was packed. It was shoulder to shoulder. The energy was super high, and the skill that all these members had was amazing. So I was kind of, in the back of my mind, I was a little happy that I couldn't get in because I didn't want to embarrass myself. But what I did was I went back and I still created the playlist, for Latin dance. But I decided, I wasn't going to go dance, but I decided I'm going to use this for boxing, right? I enjoy boxing. And, when you think about it, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of, head moving, shoulder rolling, rolling. And I translated that into my boxing and jump rope, and, it was reggaeton, salsa, and it all just fit. It was just the feeling that you wanted. You hear the rhythm, and I wasn't, paying attention to the lyrics. It was just all about the beat and the rhythm and the step. So it's, it's great. It's perfect.
Whoops.
That's where, the music brings it together, right? I mean, not a Spanish speaker, but certainly those beats will get anybody moving, whether it's in a Zumba class, another fitness application, boxing, as you put it. And I think why this is, really bringing itself to the top. And I'm curious too, we talked a little bit about some of the artists that have been, kind of raising to the top. What are you guys seeing the most in our fitness playlist as you guys are curating? What artists are finding their ways into these Feed Media Group fitness rotations?
I will definitely, Bud Bunny, Karol G. Those are like the ones that come to my mind immediately. Yeah.
I think Ozuna is a good one.
Ozuna as well. And I was going to say, and not reggaeton related, because also there's pop music done by, but Anita. So it's like
Rosalia.
Rosalia.
There, what I've noticed, so I work on First Play, and one of the things that I've noticed is the amount of Latin reggaetoneros with like EDM artists, right? And that like cross blend, and how much trainers love to use that. And honestly, when I'm listening into, hear what's going on lyrically, right? One thing that always comes to mind is, wow, I want to move, right? The only other thing that makes me want to move like that is hardcore and punk. So it's just kind of like, that energy that you get from that music, it's exceptional to curate with.
And I know we've talked a little bit about geography. We just had a comment posting, wondered about Spanish artists. Are there any Spanish artists that are, rising to the top right now, or that you guys are utilizing in stations?
Well, Rosalia for sure.
Yeah, Rosalia
is the biggie.
Yeah,
she's the big one.
Becky G.
But to answer the question to that listener from Spain, probably Rosalia is the biggest artist that we use in our curation. I don't think any other artist from Spain is currently charting or being pushed by a label or their teams. I think in general, music from Spain has had like a harder entry barrier to the U.S. As opposed to, obviously with the amount of of people that we have considered, including myself, living from Latin America, living in the U.S. and also we're neighbors with Mexico. Like California, where we're living, it used to be part of Mexico, so it's very different. To exporting music, I guess, from Europe.
We're also seeing things from like Colombia. Like where are some of the other, what is this?
Regionally speaking, as Juan was saying, Colombia and Puerto Rico, there's a lot of interaction. In the same way, and this is like Chile in Mexico. I'm from Chile. In Mexico, there's a lot of interaction as well. There's a lot of collaborations. Go ahead.
Karol G from Colombia.
Yeah.
Karol G's from Colombia as well. Yeah.
Yeah. In researching a little bit more about some of the artists I featured in the blog, there's a really interesting story about Anita's sort of rise. And that is sort of this other interesting case study in something that is in the umbrella of Latin music, but she's Brazilian, so it's in Portuguese. And so that is this whole other level of, to like a barrier to break through as far as making it in the US goes as well. That like, yes, like the majority of Latin music that we're talking about is in Spanish, but then there's Portuguese as well.
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention, because I think it's important as well, since we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month, I feel that the openness of the market, it's pretty wide right now. I mean, when Kali Uchis, who's also Colombian, released that song that I cannot remember the name, but Telepatia. That song is not reggaeton. It's not that pop. It's very dreamy. It's very like chill pop. It's like it sounds like very like an indie band, but it's in Spanish. And I was also surprised. Like, okay, this could be sung in English right now, and it will work. Why is it working in Spanish? Because it's not reggaeton, as we all been talking about. Reggaeton has to do with more rhythm and everything. This is, that was very different, and I felt that, like we, in this country is opening to like different expressions, or even listening to like something different. There are so many artists as well, like Zina Rubinos, who signed. She is Puerto Rican from Connecticut.
She's Cuban.
She's Cuban.
She's Cuban.
Okay, sorry. I thought that.
You're good.
But when you hear her records, I mean, she signed to Anti, which is a sort of a punk rock label. It's part of Epitaph Records, and her albums are incredibly beautiful, well produced. But again, the lyrics are in both languages, and probably he didn't even have to do that. You know what I mean? I think she's feeling comfortable also like in singing in a language because she's from the U.S. I mean, she's Cuban.
She's from Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
What I wanted to say also, like what you're mentioning, Arturo, is that the music is dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the things that Armando was talking about was like, right, he's boxing to reggaeton, but you could also chill to reggaeton. You could drink a Corona to reggaeton. I could drive a car at 1,000,000 miles an hour to reggaeton. The thing about the music is so dynamic, but I think what makes it even more special right now is the conversation, right, between artist and culture. I think that right now where reggaeton is headed is that it's absorbing a lot of what popular culture is giving us, right? Where when we're hearing pop radio in the United States, we're hearing more synths, right? We're hearing more like vocoder style, like
80s stuff, yeah.
Yeah, right? So they're adopting that and kind of like taking it to a whole other level. I mean, to another degree, it's just like a different style of music, right? So it's, different, and it will appeal to people differently, right? So there's that aspect too.
We got this other question. Do you need to speak Spanish to be able to appreciate Bad Bunny? I think this is a great question.
A resounding no.
A resounding no, right? Juan shared a documentary that Bad Bunny put out on YouTube, completely in Spanish. I don't speak a word, but I was certainly able to, follow along. I did appreciate the music. I did appreciate the message. Like I learned something. So yes, resounding no.
You know what, Claire? I wanted to ask you, what right now is your favorite reggaeton artist?
I mean, I guess I'm going to say Karol G as far as Latin, but she has a little more on the like bachata side as well. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's been interesting. Even I've done a couple playlists for Hispanic Heritage Month and Latin hits, and I've been lucky enough to spend 4 months or so in Spanish-speaking countries this year, and it's so interesting to me. My ear remembers a lot better than my like eyes or brain would, in terms of like I'm now like seeing song titles as I'm looking for them, But it's like, oh no, like I remember hearing this when we were like on a boat in Xochimilco and like, you know, day drinking with the rest of the the Mexican population who were there for a weekend. And so, you know, little distinctive memories and stuff like that. And yeah, the memory of that music is there. And I don't, sometimes I'm getting better at picking out voices in the same way I could in English, but is slower to pick up. But yeah, I really love the sort of experimentation within this sort of theme that is happening within reggaeton.
And I know we've talked a lot about reggaeton today. I want to kind of, you know, bring it back and say, you know, another thing that popped up in the article that I read was that, you know, while there is this united concept, and you know, there's also this real you know, kind of convergence happening. And so these styles are getting blended. You know, I think we're going to continue to see, you know, little niches pop up and the music itself diversify. But just taking a step out, I'm throwing this out. I didn't prep you guys for this one, but favorite like non-reggaeton Latin artists, anybody else that you guys want to shout out to that maybe doesn't fit into who's at the top of the charts right now or who really made this happen, but just other artists that anyone tuning in can check out to, you know, diversify what they're listening to and find an artist that they might not have heard about.
Well, I like, and I've added them to, you know, some of my playlists, is Prince Royce. He was born in the Bronx, I think from Dominican parents, but you know, he's great. I love going to, you know, listening to his music. So if anybody wants to listen to him, Prince Royce is a good go-to, at least for me.
For me, I can think of two great bands from Chile, and I'm gonna use Chilean bands because I'm from there, and I have so one of them is the Ganjas. They don't sing in Spanish, by the way. They sing in English. Juan knows them, and
they're awesome.
Yeah. They're a really good band.
They're great.
So you can find their music in all their platforms. You know, like they've done like, I don't know, at least 7 records. They're kind of psychedelic. Yeah, and the other one is another Chilean band, but they now live in Mexico. It's Los Bunkers. Los Bunkers.
Yeah.
And they're about to release an album next year. They split up for like 5 years, 6 years, and now they're back. And their trajectory is also amazing. I mean, they have great records, great musicians, and I highly recommend those two bands, the Ganjas and Los Bunkers from Chile.
I'll go Selena from like a historical perspective, but on the timeline of Latin and Spanish music in the U.S., she's a really, really important figure. So I adore her.
This one's such a tough one for me, but I'm just going to put 2 of them out there. I mean, like, I grew up listening to Celia Cruz. My mom is a huge Celia Cruz fan. So that is ingrained into my DNA. I mean, I know that it's not necessarily reggaeton, but it falls in the trap area, but Nathaniel Cano and the whole corridos tumbado, it's just fascinating. If you're into kind of like hip hopified, like country beats, but also like, it's very hard to explain with words, but it's fascinating and pretty awesome.
Awesome. And I'd say, you know, for me, one of my favorite artists that I listen to probably more than anyone is Lhasa de Sela, who I believe is from Canada and grew up in Mexico, but beautiful. And she has albums in both English and Spanish. And then also another one of my favorites is a Bay Area musician called Diana Gameros, and she makes beautiful music. Yes. So there's just so much out there. We've got one other question that came in. We're almost at time, but we've got a question from Francesca that I think is on point. She's talking about, you know, political content that comes up in music. And, you know, as curators, curating music content for businesses, for end users, you know, what how do you guys navigate that? How do you guys navigate political content when you're curating for the business world?
I think our audience is in general open to. I don't discriminate. I'm not politically correct when I'm. I mean, of course, we have guidelines depending on the customer. No explicit lyrics sometimes. But in terms of politics, I don't. I'm also a big fan of Victor Jara, as she was mentioning, and she was murdered by the regime of Pinochet in 1973, backed by the CIA and the United States government. That's declassified information. Everybody knows that this country was behind that. But I think in terms of, we talk with Juan about these things, how, like bands that are like 100% political, like Rage Against the Machine or like even like Black Sabbath. And then you see, people who are more conservative, like wearing those shirts or like asking those musicians not to get involved in politics. It's like, you haven't heard the lyrics then. So I don't know why you like this. So I think, our audience is matured enough to understand, or receive, music that is, I mean,
you guys also work so closely with our customers to determine what their brand
right.
voice is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a constant dialogue between curation and our
But
partners.
we haven't heard, like, don't play, an artist that it has a political definition, right? We never heard, from any client saying, don't play this or play more, I don't know, Kid Rock. We haven't gotten those requests. So, yeah.
Well, always a good time on Inside Music Curation. So many themes. I mean, those of you that are with us today and the rest of the curation team, you guys really are maestros when it comes to, finding the right music, working with our clients, curating to different verticals and content and placements. So thank you for always coming together and sharing your content. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. It was great to see everyone's comments today. Hopefully we got to many of them. Continue to leave comments below and we'll respond as best as we can. And really in closing, we got this lovely comment from Leslie, who is tuned in on LinkedIn. And she says, our music beats to the rhythm of our hearts, and that transcends all the boundaries, language, countries, and generations. And I think Leslie said it best today. So I'm going to go with that and sign out and say thanks again for tuning in. You can learn more about us at feedmediagroup.com, and we hope to see you back here in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.